Hello and welcome to episode 367 of Scarves Around the Funnel, the podcast dedicated to Heart of Midlothian Football Club, who've just helped City rivals Hibernian celebrate their 150th anniversary by winning the Edinburgh Derby for the 150th time. To wallow in the glory of the perfect sesquicentennial gift and reflect on Gorky's own version of the Late Late Show, I'm joined by the verbal equivalent of Saba Kerriota, the man who's always there for the perfect assist just when you think you've run out of things to say. Hello, Mr. Scott McIntosh.
Yeah, good afternoon. Apologies for the use of the headset, but I'm just sort of in between jobs just now. I'm doing a bit of Samaritan's work for any Hibs fans that are calling in today, so hence why I've got the headset on.
Wow. Okay, you're welcome. And now to the journalistic version of Craig Halkett. Always reliable, trustworthy, and if there's a deadline to be met, no matter how late, he's your man. Hello, Barry Anderson.
Hello, Mark. Sometimes very late, I must admit, but we get there in the end. I've not got a fancy headset, but my ears are still ringing for Tynecastle last night, so
How, how was the rewrite?
The rewrite was an experience. I've had a few of them over the years, as I'm sure we all have, but that was a bit more intense than most. But I was saying that to Scott a minute ago before we started recording. You'd rather have that than the game peter out into a 0-0 draw, because when you're covering Hearts and they win, it's the same for our Hibs correspondent. If he's covering Hibs and they win, then your job's so much easier. People are happier. They'll sit and chat away to you. There's loads of anecdotes that they'll come out with because they're just in that frame of mind.
So following a week when Hearts fans were accused of being the tightest in the Scottish Premiership, with supporters of the boys in maroon supposedly the most likely to dodge a trip to the bar, we didn't want lots of words to describe last night. We only wanted one because we're tight and we can only give you one. So here's a list of one word from various people to describe Hearts beating Hibs by 1-0 so late on Saturday night. Grant Young, historic. HM Foxtrot Charlie, Berserk. HMFC Tube Yaldi. Alan says quite simply scenes. Owned, says Rog Daddy. Justice, John Gillen. Glorious from Harry Temple. Horny from Mantas. Halkadelic from Kieran McLachlan. Greatest from Captain Pog. Magnifique had to be from HMFC France. Just a heart emoji from Kim Ogilvie. Natural from Mike Wright. Halktastic from Jambo G38. Hilarious from Larry. Customary from We're Going to Europe. Magnifico from G. And sorry, Mum, Cameron Ferguson says erect. One word from the journalist to describe last night. What would you say?
Seismic.
Okay, Scott.
Beautiful.
What made it so special? Was it the fact that the 90 minutes preceding the goal was utter dog shite and was reminiscent of the bad days of the early 90s as far as Edinburgh derbies are concerned? And I say bad as far as games are concerned. The results were glorious, obviously the 22 in a row, Scott, from 89 to 94. But some of those games in between, that game at Tynecastle on Saturday up until the late goal, that gave it a run for its money, did it not?
Yeah, it's very reminiscent of, some of the derbies that we've seen beforehand, and not even having to go that far back. I think if you look at the Lawrence Shankland winner in the game in 2024, the sort of the way that the game panned out prior to that winner was pretty similar as well in terms of two teams cancelling each other out and there being very little goalmouth action. I just think the reason why it's such an important goal is because it keeps that momentum going for the start of the season. It wasn't just about the bragging rights of a derby win, it was actually keeping in with the momentum and off the back of all the good sort of feedback that we've been having for the media off the back of a recent league campaign and running wins. So I think it had a bigger context to it than just that one winner to get us bragging rights in an isolated derby fixture, and that's why you probably seen those scenes.
I know we won at Ibrox, but given the state of Rangers right now, Barry, was that Hearts' first real test on Saturday?
Yeah, somebody asked me that, I think, before the game, if it was a bigger test at Ibrox. or against Hibs. It's actually difficult to say because Rangers are an absolute disaster just now, you're right, but being the very simple fact you're in the surroundings at Ibrox or Celtic Park, you know that the kind of context that brings to a game and how what a different setting it is. So I think Rangers was certainly a big test, but Hibs was just as big at the weekend there, and they're difficult to break down. You could see that just how long it took Hearts to actually get the goal, and that was one of their strengths last season was that defending and that solidity at the back. But the way, I think nobody could have scripted, just if you could have scripted the way a derby would finish, then I think that's how it would happen.
So much to look back on a glorious Saturday night. It was a reward for everybody who had to sit through the first 90 minutes to get that. Most of us saw it. I didn't. My mum didn't. And my brother-in-law didn't, because they were there and they decided to leave to beat the traffic. So Graham Hare, Marion Donaldson, and myself, who was doing a live Chelsea-Liverpool show, and my phone went nuts when I was doing that. And obviously it was all the Hearts fans that I know reaching out and just celebrating. So part of the homework we're going to get to later on is the goals that you've missed. Be honest, the ones that you look back on, you've gone for a pea, you've gone for a pie, whatever, or you've left early to maybe beat the traffic. Some of the goals that you have missed over the years. That's your homework. We'll get into that later on in the show. Also, late Edinburgh derby winners and your favourite late goals at Tynecastle over the years, and we'll preview Kilmarnock later on in the show as well. You're listening to Scarves Around the Funnel, sponsored by Forrest Hepburn and McDonald Signs, who've been offering creative sign and print solutions since the 1950s. Okay, 2009-10, St Johnstone 5, Hibs 1. The following season, St Johnstone 2, Hibs 0, St Johnstone 1, Hibs 1. Season 2013-14, Aberdeen 1, Hibs 0. Season 17-18, Aberdeen 4, Hibs 1. Aberdeen 0, Hibs 0. Season 18-19, Aberdeen 1, Hibs 0. Season 19-20, Aberdeen 1, Hibs 1. Aberdeen 3, Hibs 1. Season 20-21, Aberdeen 2, Hibs 0. Season 22-23, Kilmarnock 1, Hibernian 0. Season 23-24, Kilmarnock 2, Hibernian 2, times 2. Season 24-25, Kilmarnock 1, Hibernian 1, times 2. Season 25-26, Heart of Midlothian 1, Hibernian 0. Derek McInnes's record against Hibernian: at home, played 16, won 9, drawn 7, lost fuck all. That's going to come back and bite us on the bum at one stage, Barry. I was just hoping it wasn't going to be yesterday. So the team news for this one. I'm sure on your podcasts and in your newspaper, there was a lot of talk about Hearts maybe changing things a little bit or just keeping it the same. On our podcast last week, we kind of said, you know what? We probably think it'll be an unchanged lineup. Were you surprised that he went that way against Hibernian at home?
No, I wasn't at all. I think when you've just beaten Rangers at Ibrox and you've beaten Falkirk home comfortably 3-0, could have been 4 or 5. There's no reason to change the team unless there's an injury or some pressing reason that forces you into a change. I don't see the sense in it. And I know a lot of people are looking at it thinking, oh, Harry Milne wide on the right, the balance isn't quite there because he's left-footed and all the rest of it. But he did a job there, particularly against Rangers, but also against Falkirk and Hibs. He was effective. He's winning those diagonal balls out to the right touchline. If it's not Milne winning them, then it's Ocean McEntee who's got forward to help him. And Hearts got not as much joy out of that as they otherwise might have done, and certainly not as much joy as they got out of it at Ibrox, but it was still an effective tactic. And you saw that it caused Obita lots of problems in the early stages of the derby. He was struggling, he was fouling, and just really not getting on top of Milne at all, I didn't think. So, yeah, there was no reason to change it. Derek McInnes did absolutely the right thing. I mean, there's 2 weeks now to the next game, so whether he goes with the same team for a 4th game in succession, you need to wait and see. But I definitely think it was the right choice to stick with that starting lineup. He would open himself up for criticism if he'd changed it and then things go wrong.
Scott, there was no surprises with the Hearts lineup. What did you make of the Hibs lineup?
I mean, there was no real surprises in there in terms of when you find out that Chaiwa had that hamstring injury which forced him off at half-time last week. Jamie McGrath had that Achilles issue as well, which meant he wasn't fully fit. I think when you consider those two injuries, it seemed pretty logical for Chris Cadden to come back in the team and for Mulligan to switch up into a central midfield position and for Josh Campbell to come in. Some Hibs fans would have preferred to have seen Dylan Levitt in the game, but I think when you consider how Hibs wanted to approach the match, going back to front, I think having someone with Josh Campbell's sort of athleticism and legs just gives you something that Dylan Levitt can't. So I can understand why he was picked, and really the back five picked itself because they'd got a clean sheet at Parkhead only a week ago.
If ever a kickoff is a precursor to what we're about to see, it was this kickoff. I've never seen anything like it, and it's like buses. You wait forever for one, and Hearts basically doing the same in the second half, Barry. So the kickoff is basically played back to some bloke in a green jersey who's flicked it up and then launched it into the sky, and that just set the tone, did it not?
I did, yeah. I actually quite enjoyed it. It was Jack Iredale. I saw him just flick it up and then he's leathered it into the sky. And you're waiting for you to look at it, thinking, is this ball coming down or what? And I think it landed and Halkett stuck his leg out just to try and get something on it and it trickled it towards the touchline, I think. But I quite enjoyed the quirkiness of it. And then obviously Cammy Devlin's having a bit of a laugh at him in the second half, doing the same thing at kick-off. So yeah, it's something a wee bit different. But you're right, it does set the tone that straight away it's quite clear this is you're about to win. It's a war of attrition, and I did think there was bits of football broke out in periods during the game, more so from Hearts than Hibs, particularly down the Hearts left. Kizarides, Kingsley, Braga, when he drifted over there, they linked up quite well. But yeah, I mean, quality wise, there wasn't a great deal of it, and there seldom is in these games, as you guys know.
No, we couldn't do a 90-minute chat on that 90 minutes.
No.
Scott. The first half notes, and Barry's been kind there. There was some football that broke out. Obita's foul after 10 minutes and Beningami's foul after 37. But one thing I think, not only the opening kickoff that set the tone, I felt the referee, David Dickinson, who was taking charge of his first Edinburgh derby, I thought Laurie and Robert were excellent in commentary, the way they kind of summed it up. He was very reactive to situations. There was a number of times where he was awarding free kicks a second or two after the actual challenge had taken place. So then he was blowing his whistle because he maybe thinks or doubts himself that the decision he's made is the right one. Did that have any effect, the referee's uncertainty in his decision making? Because he upset both sets of fans. Did that have any effect on the way that the game went and the stop-start nature of it?
I don't think so. I think the game will play out that way regardless, purely because I think both teams cancelled each other out. And like I say, Hibs were always going to intend on going back to front anyway and making the most out of what they can out of Boyle and Bowie. So I get it. I get that he didn't have his greatest match. I would say that I'm not against referees taking a couple of seconds to think about a decision. I don't
When they
think
get
that's
the
such a
decision right.
yeah, I don't think it's a particular bad trait in a referee. I mean, look, Hibs fans will point at the yellow card to Abita and say that was ridiculous, which it was. Hearts fans will point to the fact that Chris Cadden didn't get
Yep.
booked for a pretty crude challenge on Kizarides at the edge of his own box in the first half, and they would be right in that as well. So I don't think his influence on the game really helped or hindered either side in a sort of unbalanced way. It was just a very inconsistent performance. But like I say, in terms of the taking a couple of seconds, I'm all for that in theory. Like you say, as long as they're getting the decision right, then that's fine. But I'm not really against that. I think more referees could follow suit for that, to be perfectly honest.
Barry, what did you make of Harry Milne up against whether it was Obita or Iredale coming across in that first half? Because he played really well against Rangers at Ibrox and then had a good game last time out against Falkirk. What were the different challenges for him with the way that Hibs set up and their personnel?
He didn't get as much space, Mark. You would have noticed that yourself because Hibs out of possession would funnel back into a back five with their wing backs tucked in. So there was a beater there to firstly mount an aerial challenge if the ball comes to Milne in the air, or on the ground, or beat us right up his backside. And he was having to quite often play a one-touch pass, not blind, but more in hope than expectation inside to somebody like Shankland, or he would have to try and lay off, or he would just simply, if it was a higher ball, he'd have to get up and just win the header and hope that the flick landed at a teammate. But he wasn't alone in that sense, because so many others were in the same predicament. You don't get time and space in Edinburgh derbies, so you've got to sometimes just flick it on, hope for the best, and see what happens after that. But I did think Milne more than justified his selection again. And it's a role that it's difficult for him to play. If you're a left-sided player, it's very difficult to play that role unless you're a natural winger, which Milne isn't. So I think for a left-back coming across to the right side, he's done extremely well in the 3 games that he's played there. I don't think he'll be keeping Chesnikov out of the team when Chesnikov arrives, but no, well, that's for a later date.
It just gives us options, Scott. And as Barry said, he's done very well in the games before this. And it was difficult in this one. Also difficult, I thought, was the midfield in the first half. We've spoken a lot about situational football and situational selections. And Cammy, alongside Benny, there is a place for them together in certain games. But there was a concern, certainly for me, as the first half wore on, that our kind of third midfielder was Lawrence Shankland dropping back into a position which he's played a lot, but he's not a natural in that position, whereas they've got the 3 in midfield, Campbell, Mulligan and Barlasser. Did we do enough to keep the ball out of that area and be brave with our passing? Because there were a number of times whereby we would bypass that central midfield area and go back the way, even if there was maybe a slightly harder pass that looked to be the better pass that was on, but they didn't take that risk.
Yeah, I probably felt as if the thing that hindered us most in the first half, in particular last night, was probably the lack of relationship between the fullback and wingers, rather than an issue coming from the centrally midfield. That was only the second time that Kingsley and Kizadidis, or sorry, the third time that Kingsley and Kizadidis and McAtee and Milne have played together, and you could see there was a bit of a lack of relationship. I don't think lack of trust is the right way of putting it, but there was times where Kingsley could have taken the ball and opened his body up and maybe played the ball down the line quicker, when instead he was going for that safer pass to Stuart Finlay, and I think that was happening all too often in the first half. Going to the central midfield, I thought Beningame and in particular Cammy Devlin played really well. Like I'd say after Craig Halkett, Cammy Devlin was probably our best performer after that. But I think yesterday in the away fixture at St Mirren highlighted that we do struggle when we don't have someone carrying the ball from centrally midfield. So when you're going up against a 5 and when your wide men are struggling to find pockets of space in between the wing backs and the centre halves, you probably need someone to be a bit more proactive for that central position. And to be fair to Benny and Cammy, I think they're trying to do that to the best of their abilities, but it's not really in their sort of natural wheelhouse, isn't it? So that's why we've spent all that money on Aju. We're obviously planning on integrating him into the team when he's fit again, and I think you'll see him add that element to the side. But I think going 2 against 3 was fine last night. I think Derek McInnes probably knew what Hibs were going to do in terms of their setup, and although they had the additional man in midfield, the way that they approached the game, it didn't really show because they weren't looking to play through the midfield. It was really a case of asking the likes of Campbell and Mulligan to instead contest for second balls when they were playing it long to Bowie and Boyle. So it didn't really have too much of an impact just playing the 2 in there, but there's definitely 1 or 2 things that we can improve on. But the good thing is we're doing it from a power of strength given where we are in the league just now. So that's the best time to do it, is figure out that there's maybe elements to the side that still needs improved on. Barry's mentioned Milne there, and I thought he'd done well yesterday as well, but you can see how difficult it is for a naturally left-sided player to play out on the right, and you could see that on occasions where the ball was coming to him and with that first touch he was taking. But defensively, he done a good job, and him and Kizadidis on the ball, they maybe weren't quite as lively as they have been in the last couple of games, but part of their role last night was to pin back Abita and Cadden, who are quite adept at getting forward and whipping balls in for Bowie. So we actually managed to negate that. So if you look at it from a defensive standpoint, they both done a really good shift last night.
Barry, if Craig Halkett doesn't score that late goal, what's the narrative of this show today?
Yeah, good question, Mark. I think probably from Hearts' perspective, it's they would have increased their lead to 3 points rather than 5, maintained their unbeaten league run, and still at the top of the table. And I don't think people would have been. They certainly wouldn't have been as content, but they wouldn't be mass despondency either. It would just be a case of, well, should have got more out of the game, but at least we didn't lose, and a bit of a more balance. But that goal going in at the last minute, it's just, I mean, it's famous saying, goals change games, obviously, but they change people's moods as well. They change mindsets, they change perceptions, they change narratives, as you just mentioned. So that's why we're having the discussion that we're having, instead of probably a little one that would be a little more muted.
Yeah, and more objective as well, and kind of bigger picture, whereas it's all about scoring late in a derby. We'll get there shortly, but one thing I thought the crowd was brilliant yesterday, Scott, and something that maybe if Hearts hadn't have had the start to the season that they've had, if this was 12 months ago, if this was under Neil Critchley, or perhaps the latter stages of Stephen Naismith's reign, and Hearts players who had the possession like they had in the game yesterday didn't take that opportunity to play it forward and weren't brave enough to make that pass, and did what they did on a number of occasions and kept possession, but it was possession for possession's sake, the noise and the atmosphere would have been very different. I thought the Hearts fans, because of where we are right now, there's a lot more patience which comes with being successful and winning games. But there's a fine margin, isn't it, between that line whereby if you're above it, you get the chance to do that and you don't get barracked from the supporters and from the stands. And if you're below it, they let you know that they want to see you get the ball quicker.
Yeah, the players have earned that, but then of course I think the substitutions make
Hmm.
a difference as well. Again, from an on the ball standpoint, Elton Kabangu doesn't bring a lot to the team yesterday, but he actually stretches Hibs at the back quite a bit in those last 10, 15 minutes. And he's actually really key to us getting the ball in that area of the park that leads to the goal. I think he chases down Grant Hanley, who then has to play it back quite quickly to Salinger, and he puts out for a throw-in. And although it takes a minute or two from that moment for us to get the winner, that's a really key point in us keeping the ball down at the Hibs end and keeping pressure on them. So the substitutions, I think, help build that momentum amongst the stands. It gives the team a bit of a freshness. It gives the fans a bit of a freshness as well. And I think you could tell that. I think there was a point around maybe around the 85th minute where the Hearts fans started to try and get behind the team again. They were trying to sing. And you're right, 12 months ago that probably wouldn't have happened. 6 months ago it wouldn't as well. But the players have to earn that right. The players have to earn that back in, and they've done that since the start of this season. We've seen last minute winners, we've seen comebacks from 3 goals down, and we've seen some really resolute sort of performances as well. If you think back to the Aberdeen game where they have a spell for 15 minutes at the start of the second half where they come back into the game. But again, I think the team are gaining that trust from the crowd now. And I think because of that, hopefully throughout the coming months, you'll continue to see the crowd back the team in adversity rather than get on their back. If we go behind, you'd like to think that an example like the Motherwell game will be very clear in the minds of the fans, and that'll help us sort of stay on board with the performances.
Crowd respond
So
as well to a manager that's brave. I think, no matter the club, you guys will be able to tell from your own emotions and experience. But when Derek McInnes puts those substitutes on, if it doesn't win the game and it finishes 0-0, you're still saying, well, at least he had a goal. At least he put on positive subs. He wasn't content 0-0. He wasn't trying to hold it and string 5 across the back and hope to see the game out. He went for it and it didn't quite work out, but we're pleased with that approach.
I read a couple of Hearts fans talking about Alexander Swallow before the game, said, I still don't know if he's any good because he hasn't really been tested too much. I was impressed with his footwork and his kicking yesterday, Scott.
Yeah, we mentioned this last week. I think he's not quite as erratic on the ball as maybe some of our other goalkeepers are. I think he's also got a good temperament. There was a few times where the ball came back to him yesterday, and you could see Boyle is clearly doing what a good forward should do and trying to chase the ball down. And rather than get flustered by that, he took his time. He waited for the centre halves to sort of split to give him those options, and he played out a good ball. I think the only time we got caught a little bit was that ball in the second half where it was kind of in between Halkett and McAtee, which led to the booking for the right back. But apart from that, I thought he'd done well. I thought came off his line a couple of occasions well to make sure that he was retrieving balls at the edge of his box. And yeah, there maybe wasn't a lot of statement saves in the first three games, but you can see that there's at least a little bit of a relationship there between him and the back four. And again, that's not just down to his inclusion, it's probably down to the continuity and selection. And if you can get a bit of continuity with your backline, particularly with your centre halves, it should pay dividends regardless of who's playing in goals as well.
Do you know what he is good at? Gamesmanship. I don't know if any of you noticed last night, after Halkett scored, he's run across, I think, towards the wheat field, right? He's had a wee 5-second run and he's punched the air or whatever it is. And then he's run back into his goal. And the balls that are perched on the cones behind the goal for to get balls back in play if it goes out of play, he's picked every one of them up and thrown it into the corner. And then he's gone to the other side and picked all those ones up and thrown them into the corner as well. So if the ball goes out of play, you can't get back in quickly. I thought it was brilliant. Again, just an experienced player who's been around football a long time and knows what's required. Just getting that little bit of an advantage. I thought it was really clever.
Do you know what, Barry? It's the little things. And 7 days on from over here, Europe winning the Ryder Cup and the examination of the two captains, what Luke Donald did, what Keegan Bradley didn't do. And it's the little things, it's the minutiae. And I'm glad you brought that up because most people probably wouldn't have noticed that. It's those little things that I'm not saying can be the difference between winning and losing, but they certainly play a part. It's the old, what is it? Fail to prepare, prepare to fail. And it's little things, but that's something you only do with experience. And he's got that calm head. I think there was once now, would it have been the first? Yeah, it would have been the first half, Scott. I think there's an offside flag that curtails it, but he's done a wee pirouette. And a wee drag back and a turn. I think it might have been on Martin Boyle. Strikers or players, when they join a new club, want to get off to a good start, want to get an early goal or a good performance. Swallows only the second Hearts goalkeeper ever to keep clean sheets in his first three games after Wilson Brown, thanks to Hearts heritage for that. Wilson Brown in August 1955, 2-0 at Wraith Rovers in the League Cup, 4-0 against East Fife in the League Cup, and then 4-0 against Dundee in the league in September 1955. And for him to get off to that good start, that just builds confidence. And we saw that when he was able to do what he did, even although the flag had gone up on the Wheatfield side.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, that should help. Look, it's always a bit of a shame with the amount of international breaks that we've got just now that we can't carry this momentum through immediately a week later. You sort of had that with the Rangers game as well, where you're sort of got this 2 week period in between that and the next fixture. But it does give the manager time to then, integrate the new players in further during the training sessions, maybe another bounce game. And again, it'll just allow Swallows some time on the training patch with the new players to kind of bed in and integrate with them as well. So look, I think, again, we've not seen much of him in terms of him having to make too many saves, but I think there's a presence there, there's a calm presence, and I think when you consider the start of the season Xander Clark had, you could see that did have a bit of an effect on the players in front of him. So bringing in somebody with that level of experience has been a good coup so far, and hopefully that continues. Good thing is he's got good experienced keepers now, pushing him for that place. Craig was back on the bench at the weekend, and you've still got Xander Clark there as third choice as well. So that should keep him ticking over, and having that competition for places will hopefully only be a good thing.
Barry's got his crossbar to thank for keeping a clean sheet. Into the second half, Martin Boyle, talk to us about the move that leads up to that. Who's kind of culpable for not getting closer? Who should have been closer to the player putting the through ball? And then obviously Boyle does well to get plenty height on it, but too much. It was a close run thing, but break down that move if you wouldn't mind for us.
I can't. I was typing at the time. I never saw it.
I'll jump in.
Feel free.
I just looked up when the ball got flicked. I think it was Bowie that flicked it on, and Boyles ran in behind. That was my extent of the.
That's good. That's fine. Now for a more detailed breakdown of that move, Scott McIntosh.
So I think what happens is obviously Halkett and Bowie are tangling together to sort of win the flick on. And I don't know whether McAtee had just been that impressed with Craig Halkett's first hour and he thought he's winning everything and he just switches off for that split second. But Bowie actually gets the first contact. He actually does pretty well, to be fair. And and Boyle just has that yard on McAtee. At just that split second, he gets in ahead of him. Thankfully, Boyle takes a really poor second touch, and that's what forces his decision to have to lift it. If he'd had a better second touch, he probably would have had the option of maybe playing the ball into the far corner and being able to side foot it in. But because of that touch, he has to make the split second decision to then try and lift it. And it was a decent effort, but unfortunately for him, not only does it hit off the bar, but it doesn't even hit off the bar and sort of move at an angle in which it goes into the goals, it comes back the way as well. And thankfully, the likes of Halkett and Finlay are there to clear the ball for us.
Yeah, Barry, you've got that kind of watch the game, but still do writing. What was your deadline, by the way? What time do you kind of get? Tell the listeners what you have to do during a game and when you have to have it in by so that it goes online whenever.
We don't have deadlines as such, marking on the games at the weekend. It's simply get the report written and the player ratings done, including picture gallery, obviously, and published on the final whistle. So all that's got to be, I'm saying on the final whistle, you might get 5-10 minutes grace, but roughly speaking, you've got to have that done and dusted, because as soon as the final whistle goes, the next stage of the game for us is get downstairs to the media centre, because the press conference is starting and you can't afford to miss that. And then there's individual interviews to be done and all the rest of it. So you need to have your report written, which is roughly 500-600 words, sometimes more if it's a really busy game. You need to have all the player ratings done, which, as you know, is starting 11 plus 5 subs, for Hearts anyway. And then you get a headline to write. In our case, there's several headlines, because you need an online headline and you need a headline for a condensed headline for the main landing page. And I'll not bore you with the details, but plus you need to attach a picture and all the rest of it. So I make no apologies for having my head down tight when that move was getting built up. I did see Bowie flick it on, and I saw Boyle go through, and when he clipped it over the goalkeeper, I thought this has got a good chance of going in. Then it comes off the bar, and Stuart Finlay's there to clear it, thankfully for Hearts. But it was a let off, definitely. And if that goes in, as you know, the whole complexion of the game completely changes.
How much of a game do you actually see when you've got to have all those things ready to go at the full-time whistle?
Nothing. That's why the reports are all over the place. Everybody keeps telling me, "Oh, you're watching a different game for me."
You're like, at least you're watching the game.
I am. I'm watching my laptop. No, it's you have to be selective about when you put your head down, and normally you'd hope anyway you get that right. But last night I didn't get it right all the time. That's why I missed that build up. You just need, when it's a lull in play, somebody goes down injured, or there's a bit of a break or whatever, then that's your time to get a few notes down.
It's the perils of the job. I mean, I had a spell when I was doing some newspaper stuff, but that was when I was freelance. I was also doing Hearts commentary at the time, and I'll let you in a little bit of a secret. Back in the day, so it would have been 2000 and kind of 8, 2009, 2010 before I came over
I
here.
know what you're going to say here.
So I did the games with Lawrence Brodie and Gary Mackay, and there was a reason that Lawrence kind of piped in. So if Hearts ever scored, I would commentate on the goal, and then I wouldn't be heard for 5 minutes, and no one ever said anything. So in those 5 minutes, I went off to do Soccer Saturday with Jeff Stelling on Sky Sports, because as a freelancer, if you don't work, you don't get paid. But there's also having too much work to do. And I did some newspaper stuff, but the newspaper stuff was it was for a Monday newspaper on a Saturday. So there's not the same deadline that Barry's got. But speaking of kind of things that you see and you don't see, for Barry, you've got to type a lot. Obviously, I'm writing stuff down when I'm commentating on games if there's a chance or whatever. Only once, I think, Scott, do I remember, and I'll tell this about myself, I don't care. I looked up and I commentated on what I'd just seen. I was like, that's a carbon copy of the first goal. Because it was a replay of the first goal. So it's okay, it's difficult when, if you're Barry and you're writing, at least as a fan, and that's what I miss. And you don't know how jealous I, and I'm sure everybody else who wasn't at Tynecastle yesterday and was watching on Hearts TV or watching in bars, we would have given nothing more, or we would have given so much more to have actually been there and the match day experience. And we haven't even discussed the goal yet. And when we do, I'm going to ask you both what your favourite late winner at Tynecastle is. And it wouldn't surprise me, Scott, we've already had a number of people getting in touch saying nothing tops that goal yesterday. So let's talk about it. The substitutions have been made. Cabangu, Carriota, and Steinwender have come on after 84. Forrest has come on for Kizaridis after 88. We're in the first minute of added time. There's already a ball put in by Carriota on his right foot that's cleared. So, what did you like about what happened next?
Well, I think first and foremost, what's really positive about it is the fact that the centre halves, they don't retreat back just because that ball's half cleared. They all stay in that position. Halkett, I think Magnuson's at the back post as well, and maybe one other player. So they're all still searching for that goal. Everyone's still very proactive and they're still wanting to try and nick a goal if they can. It'd be very easy, given that that first effort for Kajota gets sort of half cleared, for there to be a mindset in Halkett to sort of start retreating back the way. So that was really good. I think they all stay on side, which is equally as important, clear on side as well. But it's a lovely ball. It's a really good ball, and I'm really happy to see that he's been able to have that positive contribution now, because obviously it's been a slow start for him given the level that he's came up from. But I think the reports from training have been really positive regarding Karjota. I think it's been more of a physicality aspect to
Mhm.
his profile that I think they've been wanting to work on rather from a technical standpoint. And it's a great ball. It's put into a great area. But as good as the assist is, the finish is brilliant. I mean, that's not a hard, an easy finish for Halkett. It's on his weaker foot. It's on his left foot as well. So he's got to keep that down. But he manages to angle it into the far corner as well. It's a really good effort on the volley, and he's starting to show signs of that auxiliary striker that we had when he first signed. If you remember when he signed in 2019, I think he scored maybe 4 or 5 in the League Cup, maybe early doors that season before he picked up his first of, unfortunately, a spate of injuries at the club. So he is capable, popping up at set plays and from cross ball situations. But it was a brilliant goal, really good assist, but an even better finish for me.
Do you know what Alan Kernan has to do with Craig Halkett's career, Barry Anderson?
No, I don't. I would guess something to do with knees.
No, Alan Kernahan was his youth coach at Rangers. And when he joined Rangers, he was a striker. He joined the youth setup as a forward, Craig Halkett. And Kernahan's like, yeah, you're decent, but I think you'll make a better centre back. And that's why Derek McInnes afterwards referenced his early days as a striker. But it was Big Kearney, who played with Alan Preston at St Johnstone, who'd said, "Yeah, but I think we should move you back." So I don't know if you ever lose that instinct, but as Scott's saying, when he's played that auxiliary striker role before and he's got goals, he's just a handful. But the key thing that Scott's just mentioned is it's that kind of back in the day, you used to be able to celebrate goals. Once it goes in, you look at the lino. If the lino's gone back to halfway, job done. There's always that kind of, he's not offside, is he? But he's timed his run perfectly, has he not?
Yeah, he did. And as Scott's pointed out, the composure to finish that off with his weaker foot as well, let's not forget, and just side foot that into the net. It probably comes from those striking days that you mentioned there, Mark. But I thought from Hibs' point of view, if you're a Hibs defender or a coach, you're spewing that nobody's actually thrown themselves into that. Get a head on it, get a leg, a thigh, a backside, whatever on it, just to get something in the way. Poor defending from that point of view. But I mean, Halkett's up there and he's timed his run brilliantly, as you said. Great finish, and then he set off on that celebration run. Nobody seemed to be able to catch him. It's one of those moments that there's so much going on. I was watching, I saw the cross first. I thought that's a decent ball. Then Halkett's got the finish. It's a really comfortable, composed finish. It looked from behind. There's actually more power in it than I realised at the time, having seen the replay. And then he set off on the run, and people are trailing in his wake, wanting to celebrate with him, but he's not letting them. He just keeps going. And then I look to the technical area, and Derek McInnes has gone on a mad maze, and he's ended up towards some fans at the front of the main stand. And then, as I said, I looked over to Swallow, and he's running about the back of his goal, throwing balls a bit towards corner flags. It was so much going on, but a great moment.
Scott is the only one of the three of us who A, saw it, and B, I know Barry saw it, but B, was able to celebrate it. That was one of the things I thought about limbs, and I'm sure we'll do that as a homework if we get another late winner or whatever. But how did it compare with celebrations that you've had personally of late winners?
It's probably up there because it was a late winner. it's funny you refer to the homework in terms of last minute goals, and I think some of the more famous ones that we've had down the years, particularly at Tynecastle anyway, have actually been maybe in draws. So I was thinking back to Jose Katongo's effort against Celtic, which again,
Yep.
I think that's the one that you can sort of draw parallels with, because it's not just about that one incident and that one isolated fixture. At that stage, we were still, that was March time and we were top of the league with Celtic that
Hmm.
season, and it had such a big ramification for the league campaign that season as well. I think that's why last night's just hits that bit harder. It's the fact that it isn't just about the bragging rights of one game and one fixture. It does again just keep the momentum moving on into the international break in terms of our league campaign as well. And I think that's probably why there was that feeling amongst the fans. It just adds to that belief of something could be happening here. And again, we can dissect the 90 minutes and we can dispel that and say why that maybe isn't going to be the case, because there is still things that need to be improved upon in terms of the first 11 in the squad in general. But I think just again, I was asked this question yesterday when I was on Talksport and talking about, should Hearts fans be excited? Should they be talking about the title challenge? I think, given how Hearts have been over the last few years, I think every fan should be making the most of this. Every fan should be enjoying each moment that comes along and not worrying about whether we win the next fixture or not. They should just be living in the moment, and last night was a good example of that. Let everyone else talk about title challenges and whether that's a valid conversation at
Hmm.
this early stage of the season or not. Fans should just be absolutely enjoying the moment, and that's what last night was all about for me.
I think that's a great point. And it comes on the back of a week, Barry, where I've been on social media quite a bit and I've read a lot from fans of other clubs, not saying it'll never last. A few of them are. They're just like Callum McGregor said, look, Aberdeen did this last season and they went 12 games and won 11 of them and then still ended up 20 odd points behind the team that finished second. But there just seems to be not an admiration, but a kind of a glance from afar. Oh, by the way, that Braga's all right, or that Kizaridis is all right, and oh, Hearts have started well. It's not like they're saying it's definitely going to be a flash in the pan or definitely not going to be a flash in the pan, Barry. But there's those looking from afar supporting other sides, kind of saying, "Oh, we take him at our club." That hasn't happened for a while for Hearts. Are other fans and other teams starting to take Hearts a bit more seriously?
I think the objective ones, if objective is the right word, the more objective ones are taking
Sensible
more
ones.
seriously. Sensible, yeah, it's maybe a good way of describing it. I think you know what it's like. It's been so long since anybody other than Celtic or Rangers won the league in this country. People are crying out for some kind of change. Now, I don't think it matters whether it's Hearts at the top of the league, whether it's Hibs, whether it's Aberdeen, Dundee United, St Mirren, Motherwell. I don't think people really care. They just want something a bit different. Now, right now, at this moment in time, Hearts are something a bit different because they've got this. They've started unbeaten in the league. They're 5 points clear as we speak. But there's only 7 games gone, so there's no. I've not met anybody yet who's said Hearts are going to win the league. Nobody's getting to that point yet. But as Scott points out, people should people are entitled to dream. If you can't dream and enjoy the moment when your team's top of the league, then when can you? You know, we spend so long in this country. Every team spends so long chasing Celtic and Rangers. So if somebody's above them and leading the way, even if it's only after a few games, then why shouldn't their fans be allowed to enjoy that? And I think you're right, Mark. I think there are some other fans who have a bit more of a handle in the wider picture in Scottish football that will be able to say to themselves, yeah, well, good on Hearts. Why shouldn't they have a go at it? Why shouldn't their fans enjoy it while it's lasting? It might only last another, whatever,
Yeah.
2 or 3 weeks. It might last 2 or 3 months. It might last till March and April, and then you've got a real title race on your hands. Who knows? None of us can sit here and say this is going to go this way or that way. From a journalistic point of view, it's great to cover, much better covering a team that's winning than this stage last season when they were really struggling. They're down the bottom of the league. It's night and day. But I would imagine from a fan's point of view that you just want to ride the wave. Why shouldn't you?
And we can't control that noise as well as a club because we're not fully in charge of our own destiny. I think a lot of the chat about us being title challengers is fueled by the regression of Celtic and Rangers at the start of the season. And because of that, we've just got to concentrate on what we can do. And as long as we keep winning, it puts pressure on them, especially with them both playing on the Thursdays just now. So it gives us an opportunity to just sort of, you know, even if it's just giving those two a bit of a kick up the backside, then that's still a good thing for Scottish football, generally speaking, because their sort of demands and their expectations seem to have, especially in Celtic's case, they seem to have decreased because there hasn't been a challenge for a while. I mean, Celtic have pretty much dominated domestically for the last 12, 13, 14 seasons. And because there hasn't really been a challenge out with it, that apart from maybe one season, you can see that that's feeding into the board, at least. Maybe not so much the fans, but in terms of how the board have approached this season. So look, as long as we can just control what we can, you let other people talk about it. There is going to be more heightened expectation this season. I think because Derek McInnes is in charge, and I think because Derek McInnes has a good profile amongst the media, I think we will be talked about in a more positive fashion. And again, there's the Tony Bloom factor as well. And I think people are starting to understand that when Tony Bloom gets involved in a project, it tends to have positive results as well. So I think that's the difference between now and say maybe 18-19 season where we were top of the league come October, or maybe a few seasons prior to that when I think we won our opening 5 games under Robbie when we got promoted in 2015. I think there's a few other factors now which is maybe driving the conversation where it maybe hasn't done in the past.
I think that's a key point as well. The Tony Bloom factor. If there's anybody who's going to get Hearts in and about Celtic and Rangers, it's Tony Bloom with the record that he's got and the contacts and the Jamestown thing and all the rest of it, the whole network. And I just think he's such an important player in all of this. And I actually saw, there's not many of them, but there's one or two Celtic fans on social media saying that they would actually welcome a Hearts title charge because if it goes the distance, it might put a rocket up their board's backsides and get them to sort out the situation at their club. And then Rangers side, clearly Rangers fans would much rather Hearts won the league than Celtic. So I think there are some other teams that out there who fans of other teams, I should say, who be out there and willing this to go as far as it can, willing it to go the distance.
You're listening to Scarves Around the Funnel, sponsored by Forrest Hepburn and McDonald Signs, who've been offering creative sign and print solutions since the 1950s. Okay, your homework this week. What's been your favourite late goal at Tynecastle over the years? After I'd sent the tweet, I thought I shouldn't have put winner. I should have just put any late goal that was scored. Because as Scott quite rightly said, you've got Jose Katongo against Celtic, you've got Graham Weir against Hibernian. Before we get to what you've sent in as your favourite late goal, let's get the boys' thoughts. And we'll start with you, Scott. If you were to pick one above all else, and you can include the goal on Saturday night as well, what would be your favourite Hearts late goal at
I've
Tynecastle?
got a couple. It's hard for me
Okay.
to pick between these two. So the
Okay.
first one's more from a comical point of view because of the scorer and the aftermath of it as well. So we're playing Celtic at home, 1995. We're 1-0 down going into the last minute, and it was a wet, dreary sort of February or March day. Because of that, the Gorgie Road end hadn't been built, so everything was still open ended at that stage in terms of the terracing. And they'd given Celtic fans these sort of, it was like foam seats to sit on to try and keep their backsides dry. So Celtic fans had been spending the whole game turning these seats into like makeshift crosses to try and wind up Hearts fans. Uh, Willie Jameson pops up with a 25-minute just thunder bastard of an equaliser
It's more than
to cap.
25 yards.
Well, I maybe 30, maybe 30. I'm maybe doing him a disservice. Gets us a 1-1 draw, and then all those sort of foam crosses end up getting thrown onto the pitch at the end of the match. So that's one of these goals that just always sticks in the back of your mind. I think the other one's probably John Robertson's late equaliser against Dunfermline, where he equals Jimmy Warhod's
Mm.
league record. Again, scrappy goal. There was even a lot of chat about whether he gets much contact on it, but it was a really important goal. He'd went quite a while after getting so close to the record to sort of reaching it. I think he went 2 or 3 months without a goal. And I
Hmm.
think that goal that he gets that day allows him to feel comfortable enough to then hit the double that he does against Rangers a week or two later to actually break the record. So that's a real important one from an individual standpoint and a sort of record-breaking standpoint. Those are the two that kind of strike out to me, alongside the Jose Katongo one, because I think there was a lot of people that I knew for school that actually ran on the pitch that day after that goal. I think it was a lot of people for Forrester High School that ran on the park that day. And there was stewards slipping about trying to catch them and everything. I always remember Steve Fulton's reaction to that goal always made me think you're still a Celtic fan at heart, because you can see all the Hearts players joining in with the celebration, but you can just see Steve Fulton just sort of pinching his nose and walking back to the centre circle. But yeah, not really any sort of last minute winners, more so sort of equalisers are fresh in the mind for me.
Barry.
I was thinking about this earlier, Mark, when I got your message, and it's not a good thing getting my brain into overdrive. So please forgive me if I go on a bit of a tangent here. One goal that stood out for me was Billy King's against Hibs in the 90th minute. And that wasn't a winner, so I don't know if that counts. But I just remember the scenes when he's round to the goalkeeper and he's flicked it in the net. Obviously, that was the day Hearts beat Hibs and avoided relegation, or prolonged relegation, should I say. Delayed it. So I think that's something that always stuck in my mind, just the way that the response, Gary Locke's celebration at the end, and the way Hearts really, it was a very young Hearts team as well, and the way they fought to try and avoid going down on that particular day against their rivals. Another couple that stood out was John Souttar's late winner against Celtic, but I mean, those the celebrations that day, because the crowd was restricted because of COVID, it didn't have the same effect, although it was a very important goal opening day of the season. And Cammy Devlin's against Rosenborg, which took Hearts through on aggregate. The late goal, I think that was to win the game 3-1 and take them through on aggregate 4-3, I think. And it was one of those. I mean, Devlin was brilliant that day. On a personal level, I had a family member over from Australia. My sister was over, so my brother-in-law was at the game. He's Australian. It was the first time he'd ever been to Tynecastle, and of course the wee Australian guy scored a couple of goals, so it couldn't have gone any better for him. I picked him up in the pub further down Gorgie Road. He'd met Hearts fans and just went on the rampage. So yeah, I enjoyed all those goals. And on a personal note, the Billy Dodsley goal for Scotland. I know that's not a Hearts goal, but I'm
Estonia.
Yeah, against Estonia, 98. Scotland were pretty poor that day, but managed to get a late victory thanks to Billy Dodds.
Is that 3-2?
Yeah.
I remember that one. Yeah. Okay, let's see what you've got in store for us. James Christie, the wonderful James Christie, Hearts photographer, producer of Sacked in the Morning, and also was integral to the Vladimir Romanov Tsar of Hearts documentary on BBC Radio Scotland, says, does it have to be a winner? Asking for a friend. And he's got the Jose Kitongo photo of him firing home the equaliser against Celtic. Kieran McLaughlin says it's got to be between last night and Kevin Kyle's. And although not a late winner, a special mention would go to Solius Mikalunas for nearly taking the nets clean off the posts on Boxing Day in 2006. Remember that, Scott?
Yeah, I remember that. I think a lot of Hearts and Hibs fans would probably tell you that's the last time there was a proper, really good Edinburgh derby, like a competitive one. Well, we could all argue about ones that we've enjoyed more since then, but I think in terms of two teams going at it and providing a good spectacle for the neutral, that was probably the really last good one, and that's coming up for 20 years ago now, so that says a lot about this fixture.
Aye, I'd rather the games were shite if we kept winning them.
Oh, exactly.
And I talk about that thinking that we're on some sort of unbeaten run. That was our first victory since December 2023, I think. So
I
I
think at
think,
Tiny as well. I
yeah,
think we've won maybe 4 or 5 now in the last 11, and they've had 3, and there's been 3 draws. So
I think
I
we were
think this
unbeaten
is
in
always
four,
the
yeah.
problem when you're of a certain vintage. I was born in '83, and for the first 11 years of my existence, Hearts had a 17 and
Good.
22 match
Yep.
unbeaten run.
Yep.
But if actually you apply a bit more recency bias to it and you look at the last 10 years, it is now more of a competitive fixture in terms of wins and draws for both teams. And I think that's something, I know I'm only going to talk for myself, but it's something I sometimes let slip when I'm thinking about how we're going to do in derbies. You do sometimes tend to go further back than maybe looking at the more recent fixtures and how difficult a tie it might actually be.
let's continue with your submissions as to the best late goal or late winner you've seen at Tynecastle. Elliot Hall, Kevin Kyle, Cammy against Rosenborg was also fun. Jamie Devlin, if not last night's, then these two have to be right up there. Kevin Kyle's coming so quick after Gary Glenn missed a similar chance. Jim Jeffries was talking about that in our trilogy recently, and Jim was saying he didn't even think Kevin had scored. He was, what the fuck are you going away doing? And he realised he was away to celebrate with his arms outstretched, and then he saw the joy on the fans around him in the Hearts dugout, and Jim quickly realised that the ball had ended up in the back of the net. John Suter says, Jamie against Celtic, lucky to be at Tynecastle that night. 5,000 sounded like a full house when that one went in. A lot of them have started like this. Ian McIver says, if not last night's goal, then Kevin Kyle in the New Year derby or Austin McCann against Celtic. Honourable mention for Kutongo. William Angles says Cammy Devlin second against Rosenborg. It's been mentioned already. That won us the tie. Ian McLean, if you look closely, when the ball is being recycled via Michael Steinvender to Saba Carriota, both Craig Halkett's arms go into the air saying me, me, me. So he already knows that he wants to get on the end of that one, but it's all right wanting it. It's another thing getting it, and then a third thing, and most importantly, putting the ball in the back of the net. Captain Pog says Craig Halkett against Hibs. Now, thanks to Hearts' heritage, Halkett's late winner was the 16th time that Hearts had scored a winning goal in the last 5 minutes against Hibernian, either at Tynecastle or Easter Road. So 16 late winners in the last 5, compared to Hibs, who've had 3 late winners scored in the 85th minute or later. 1955, Jimmy Mulkerrin, Gary O'Connor scoring, I think that was against Tepi Moylan, and beat him at his near post, Scott. I
Yeah,
remember saying,
that was the 1-0 game, wasn't it?
yeah, I think Moylan went down in installments with those fucking tights of his.
I think
And
that was,
Ross
is that not the match
Caldwell.
where I mean, I think Paul Hartley always credits that as the start of his Hearts career because he gets bombed out for 2 months and he actually comes back a better player for it.
That's right.
I think Craig Levein wasn't happy with his performance that day.
Ross Caldwell got the other late winner for Hibs at Tynecastle in May 2013. So they've not scored a goal to win an Edinburgh derby in the last 5 minutes or later for 12 years. Some recent Hearts late winners since 1984. There were 7 before that, but since 84 and Derek O'Connor scoring the winner at Easter Road, there was Wayne Foster in the Scottish Cup. There was Stephen Presley's penalty at Easter Road in March 2002. Phil Stamp, of course, another 2-1 win at Easter Road in the same year, twice in 1 year. We did that through Presley and Stamp. David Obua scoring again at Easter Road in a 2-1 win in 2010. Kevin Kyle, we've spoken about. Don Cowie, of course, Hearts beating Hibs 1-0, 87th minute winner in the Scottish Cup in 2018. Lawrence Shanklin scoring in the 3rd minute of added time at Easter Road in December 2023. And Craig Halkett scoring that goal 53 seconds into added time yesterday. So those are the late goals scored against Hibernian. But as I said earlier, I was doing a show. My mum and my brother-in-law didn't see the goal either. So we want to know on homework this week via social media, X, Blue Sky, Instagram. We've got a brand new Instagram, Scarves Around the Funnel, or email at podcast@scarvesaroundthefunnel.co.uk. Goals you missed because ... Barry's already said that there's a number of times he's been unable to see a goal and has to ask a journalist around him what happened there because he's so busy writing. Scott, have you got one above all others that tops that you wish you'd seen but you were unable to witness it because of whatever reason?
Yeah, Stefan Adam's second goal in the Scottish Cup final. I was still
Oh,
waiting on my pie.
shit.
So yeah, the queues were mental that day at Parkhead. But thankfully there was screens up there next to the concession stand, so we did get to sort of see it and obviously hear the roar. But yep, didn't actually see that goal live, I'm afraid.
Wow. Barry?
Haven't actually missed that many over the years, Mark. I was trying to think. Because even when you're writing, when there's a build up to a goal, if you are typing at the time and
The
you hear
noise.
the crowd, you'll lift your head naturally. So I don't actually have. I have missed goals over the years, no doubts about that, but I can't actually remember what ones would come to mind. I did. I stayed on at Scotland, Liechtenstein. I stayed on to Steve McManus, whatever that was, a 124th minute winner when at Hampden. Because I was praying there was going to be something coming that would make that game worthwhile. But no, I can't think of too many others.
Feel free if you send us an email or get in touch via social media. To be honest as well, and tell us, have you told a porky pie and gone home or gone to the pub and spoken about a goal like you were there? The reason I ask is the Hearts Hibs 4-4 game. There must be a few of you out there that have maybe said to your pals that, oh, brilliant, I celebrated, did all this, and you'd already left when Graham Weir got his second goal. I'm just, as a commentator, right, if we miss goals because we're not there, there's a problem. If we go for a pie or whatever, there's an issue. So it has to go back as my time as a fan. And I was at Ibrox and I missed all three Hearts goals when we won the BP Youth Cup in 92, 93. I was either going for a piss or going for food or whatever. I think Sandy Clark was in charge of that team, Scott, and Hearts beat Rangers 3-1 at Ibrox. Didn't see any of the goals.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you managed to miss three, but
It's good though. I'm going to do it.
that is some effort. I mean, I remember missing a goal at Ibrox, and it wasn't an important goal, but we'd been really struggling for even goals at Ibrox during the spell towards the late 90s and early noughties, and we were playing there 2001. We were already 2 goals down in the opening half an hour, and I'm like, same old story. I'm going to go and get something to eat. Miss Kevin McKenna scoring for about 20 yards out, and it was about the only goal that was scored at Ibrox for about 4 or 5 years. So I was a bit annoyed at that one. But again, not an important one, just a funnier one.
So plenty late goals, but according to a few of you, not many better than Saturday's Craig Halkett's goal. You're listening to Scarves Around the Funnel, sponsored by Forrest Hepburn and McDonald Signs, who've been offering creative sign and print solutions since the 1950s. I was going to end by previewing the Kilmarnock game, and then I totally forgot that we've got Scotland games coming up. Some of our guests don't really care about Scotland too much. Laurie Dunsar, Hearts TV commentator and former host here, isn't really a big fan, but we do have a massive Scotland fan who goes home and away, not to work, but as a member of the Tartan Army, Barry Anderson. And before we wrap up, what's the kind of history of you and your family and your friends and your relationship with the Scottish national team that sees you as fervent as ever when international breaks come around?
It's a long story. I think I told you that on Riverside at Cologne last year.
That's why I'm asking you again, because we were both
You
pissed.
can't remember. No, my dad took me my first Scotland game when I was a kid, 1989, the final World Cup qualifier at home in Norway. Managed to get a 1-1 draw, and that was Scotland qualified for the World Cup. Got soaked that night, and we were on the open terrace, and I loved it, and just that was me pretty much hooked. Went to Euro 96 with my dad. Went to France 98 with my dad and some of my other family, and my auntie, my uncle, stepmom. One of my mates came along as well, who I still go to games with now. We're meeting up this week with him and his little boy. So since then, obviously, I've had my family. My son goes with me. Dylan, you've met Dylan a couple of times. He's at the games all the time. He was in Germany as well with his mates. So it's just kind of growing arms and legs. And we've kind of set up our own unofficial Tartan Army supporters club. It's called the Siegfried Kirchen Tartan Army.
Because?
After the referee who added all the time on against Cyprus in 1989 when Richard Gough scored the late winner. So that's how sad we are, Mark. Very, very sad indeed.
That's okay. Hey, we've all got our little foibles and our little stories as well. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm thinking it's nearer 1 than 10 for Scott McIntosh and his interest based on comments that you've made about the national team and international breaks since you joined us on Scarves Around the Funnel. Any interest? Will you even watch the games against Greece and Belarus?
I will watch the games, yeah. It's never been something where I get too high or too low based on the result. I just take an interest in watching it. I'm afraid I just put too much emotional investment in Hearts. I don't have anything left in the tank for anything else. So yeah, and to be honest, I'm still like I've only been to a couple of Scotland games, and I remember being there for the Scotland-Lithuania match. I got an offer of a ticket maybe the Friday before the game when I'd had a few drinks, and it was the famous infamous match with Mikalunas in the dive. And I just remember watching the game and thinking, there's more Hearts players in this Lithuania team than there is for Scotland. Like I just, aye, it's something that's just never quite hit me emotionally. But I'm always happy to see them do well because I've got plenty of friends in that are definitely bigger followers than I'll ever be. But hopefully they'll do okay. They've got half a chance. I think they've got to try and get at least 4 points out of the next two games. But yeah, they've gave themselves an opportunity with their last two away performances, especially the defensive performance in Denmark. It was really, really impressive.
Perfect segue to discussing how well we did last week, Scott, with our predictions when we were asking which members of the Hearts squad would have a chance of getting in, and we totally forgot to mention the only Hearts player that's actually in the Scotland squad, Craig Gordon. So now the decision for Stevie Clarke is who starts in goal? Is it Angus Gunn again, not getting any game time at Nottingham Forest because of Matt Sells? Is it Craig Gordon, who's not getting any game time because he's been injured? Barry, what do you think? Do you go with the experience or do you go with the same again, like Steve Clarke is known to do in the past?
Yeah, I can't see how he doesn't play Angus Gunn, Mark, for a few reasons. One, obviously, he's kept 2 clean sheets in the first 2 World Cup qualifiers. Yes, he's not playing at club level, but it has only been, what, as we sit here now, 3 weeks since those games, before by the time the Greece game comes around, pretty much 4 weeks. So for a goalkeeper, that's not an enormous amount of time. You can get away with that, I think. And also Steve Clarke, I think one thing that's always at the back of my mind, Steve Clarke made a huge pitch to Angus Gunn to convince him to switch allegiance and play for Scotland. So having done that and installed him as his number one, he's not going to drop him for pretty much any other keeper, but certainly another keeper that's not playing regularly at club level.
So that's still to come. We've got Kilmarnock against Hearts that follows that. We'll preview that next week on Scarves Around the Funnel. My thanks to Barry Anderson and to Scott McIntosh. It was the perfect weekend with Craig Halkett. After 90 minutes of absolute boredom, he pulls out a fantastic late winner from Caryota's Cross as Hearts help Hibs celebrate their 150th anniversary in style. 5 League Cup wins over them, 18 wins in the Scottish Cup, and that was win number 127 in the league for Hearts over Hibs, with a 16th late goal to win an Edinburgh derby. Bye for now.